Well, on behalf of the Broesamle and Von Driska families, I'd like to welcome you to our ribbon-cutting ceremony for the recently renamed Johns Fox Canyon Trail. My name is Kathy Broesamle, and I was privileged to be John's spouse for over 60 years. Today I wear his Land Conservancy hat in honor of his legacy. While we shared many adventures, our hiking styles differed. John was always ahead, yet he waited patiently for me so we could finish together. We both used trekking poles on these challenging trails. A word to the wise. The Ojai Valley Land Conservancy commemorated John by naming this trail John's Fox Canyon Trail because of his leadership in acquiring so much of Ojai's open space. He did this through wisdom, foresight, persistence, and hard work. He enlisted people's help. He wasn't afraid to ask for donations because the cause was bigger than his ego. The trail we stand below today is a fitting tribute to John's memory. Its steep ascent with slippery gravel and uncertain footing mirrors the health challenges John faced and overcame throughout his life. Just as he navigated this path with care and determination, he approached life's obstacles with wisdom and perseverance, always seeing each challenge through to the end, just as he did on this trail time and again. Yet what makes this trail truly worthy of John's name is not just its difficulty, but the spirit of volunteerism that brought it into being. John was the embodiment of that spirit, a dedicated volunteer whose efforts helped shape the landscape we cherish today. I'd like to ask, how many of you here have volunteered for the Land Conservancy? Raise your hand. A lot of people. In doing so, you have honored John's legacy and helped ensure that these open spaces remain for generations to come. The OVLC has always been an organization of volunteers, all kinds of volunteers, board members, event helpers, office helpers, trail builders. It's only because of inspired and dedicated volunteers that Ojai has any open space at all. John was a consummate volunteer. He did all of the things I just listed. One of those other volunteers was Alan Jacobs. Alan and John were hiking buddies back in 2013. One day, I remember it well, Alan, still an OVLC board member, had invited John and me to take a hike and see this new potential property the Land Conservancy was hoping to purchase. Do this. It was rough country. I was actually a bit grumpy about a tough hike on a warm day. We had to take an indirect route up Pratt and Foothill and do some bushwhacking, huffing and puffing, but eventually we came to a beautiful spot that overlooked the valley. I remember we stood there quietly, gazing down the mountainside. Alan smiled, looked us in the eye, and asked us what we thought of the view. It was obvious that his heart was overflowing with a dream of a grand view of native open space combined with grand vistas of the Ojai Valley. He asked us to contribute what we could. How could we even consider saying no to that? He'd hiked us all the way up there. It was a tough hike. Of course we contributed, and we felt good about it. I wonder how many additional hikes Alan made up to that spot to make his spiel. Perhaps some of you were recipients of Alan's enthusiasm back in the day. I can tell you one thing, his personal approach worked. Volunteers raised the money by talking to their friends. Take a look at the many, many names of contributors on the plaque over here. Not only did people contribute monetarily, but more hands-on volunteers helped build and maintain Fox Canyon Trail. We sadly and suddenly lost Alan a few years ago, but what a marvelous legacy that great man left. Not only open space, but the concept that the person-to-person approach not only raises dollars, but also creates passion and the feeling of ownership that comes to those who contribute. Those volunteers did it the hard way, the best way. Alan and John were quite a team. We've lost both now, but their legacy lives on in the names of trails. The Alan Jacobs Trail on the Ventura River Preserve, and now this one for John. Inspired OVLC volunteerism lives on today, and I'd like to personally thank the recent hardy and hardworking volunteers who recently shored up John's Fox Canyon Trail after this winter's storms. I want to thank Paula Power. Where are you, Paula? Over here. For her dedicated volunteer work creating open space and bringing a much-needed park to Miners Oaks. John's legacy continues through volunteers like Paula. And there she is. Please give her a hand for her monumental efforts to make that park a reality. And I haven't even mentioned the quintessential volunteer, Jim Jackson, who has quietly made a huge difference here at OI's open space acquisition. You'll be hearing more about him in a few moments. Where are you, Jim? There he is. John and I were starting the process of rewilding our backyard avocado grove back into native chaparral when he passed away. The work has continued at our house thanks to the concerned resource environmental workers, otherwise known as the crew. Derek Poltney, Scott Tompkinson, where are you, Scott? And Derek, Scott, there's Scott. And Derek is here somewhere. There he is, back and back. And crew volunteers have provided us with native plants and new wildflower meadows. The Land Conservancy is doing a fantastic job rewilding property at the Turtle Conservancy and other locations around the valley. Other local homeowners are transitioning to native plants in their yards. We are fortunate to have these caring organizations and families nurturing our lands and saving our planet. I was inspired on Sunday, February 1st, when I was privileged to hear Doug Tallamy speak about how the loss of native habitat is severely reducing the caterpillar population, which is having devastating ramifications all up and down the food chain. Professor Tallamy assured us that every little bit of native plant rewilding helps save our planet, even if it's just a pot of native plantings on a balcony or patio. You may not know this, but up until the day he died, John and a few others were quietly negotiating with the owners of what we like to call Maricopa Meadow, the 14 acres across from Nordhoff High, to see if we could privately raise the money to protect that land as an extension of the Ojai Meadows Preserve. That parcel was always envisioned as the completion of the Ojai Meadows Preserve. It is currently nothing but a patch of invasive weeds and a non-native tree. It gets mowed once a year for fire prevention, and that's it. We imagined it as a rewilded oak woodland with native plants interspersed about. We were getting close to an agreement to buy it a few years back when a well-heeled corporate developer swept in and the property went into escrow. After several months, it fell out of escrow. This has happened more than once. Today, the property remains for sale, and it could potentially become a shopping center or an apartment complex. You may recall the proposal for 9 10-story buildings proposed for that property a few years ago. Please take a moment to imagine what that scale of development might look like as you drove from Vons to Miners Oaks. You would need to pause for cross-traffic pulling into and out of the development. Picture a traffic signal where 5 Points is now, perhaps another one at Church Road. Imagine paved parking lots and non-native trees planted in squares surrounded by concrete. I invite you instead to consider a wildlife corridor under Maricopa Highway and 14 acres of a restored nature preserve right here in town for all to enjoy. Open space begins with an idea. This was the kind of vision that John had, and we promised him in his final days that we'd try to see it through. Maricopa Meadow is a perfect location for the type of rewilding project described by Doug Tallamy and John Broesamle. Imagine native trees and plants, winding paths and natural pools, creating a peaceful, easily accessible space for local residents and wildlife. This dream, fueled by dedicated volunteers and land preservation professionals, could become a reality. That was John's dream. Please take a pot or two of milkweed today as a gift from the Matilaha Native Plants Nursery. Bob Sussman, the owner, assures us that these plants will soon emerge from dormancy and thrive. They don't look like much now, but if you take one, nurture it with water and sunshine, maybe talk to it, and plant it in your yard, you'll see what patience, love, and persistence can provide, just like Alan and John did to acquire open space. Your tiny rewilding project will make a difference. It truly takes a leap of faith to launch a campaign for restoring land. And I am deeply grateful that the Land Conservancy has recently taken that bold step at the entrance to the Ojai Valley. My family is honored to contribute to this monumental effort. I invite Adam Morrison. Where are you, Adam? Could you step forward for a minute? Adam is the Development Director of the Ojai Valley Land Conservancy. He has demonstrated exemplary leadership and professionalism in organizing today's event. Our family's contribution to open space is made in recognition of Adam Morrison's outstanding events. We are grateful for this exceptional partnership and appreciate the dedication you have shown in making this event possible. We hope our gift inspires others to join in safeguarding these precious lands. With that, I am delighted to introduce my wonderful daughter, Carolyn Von Driska, who carries forward our family's love for the Ojai Valley and who misses her father dearly. Carolyn, where are you? There she is.
Hi, everybody. I hope I can get through this without sobbing grotesquely in front of all of you. There are so many of you that I want to thank for being here. Every single one of you has deep meaning for our family. So thank you for being here. Mom mentioned Alan Jacobs, who is very near and dear to us. His daughter Sarah is here, so be sure and say hello to her, Sarah. I don't know where you are, but oh there, right there. That is Alan's daughter Sarah. And her husband Josh single-handedly saved Dad for 5 extraordinary years with inoperable pancreatic cancer. Her husband Josh Rosenberg, UCLA oncologist, a true hero. Anybody I care about, I want to have see him if they have to battle the same battle that Dad had. I'm not even on script, so I better focus. Give a lawyer a microphone and we could be here a long time. But before I say my piece, I'd like to invite, well, first I'd like to thank all of the electeds and the elected representatives who are here. We have school board president, Attica, or member now, Atticus Reyes, also on staff for our beloved Steve Bennett. I think I saw Rachel Lang from the city council. And we have, and Leslie Bennett, Steve Bennett's wife here, right here. Am I missing anybody? And we have all the extraordinary nonprofits represented here. Forest Watch hasn't been mentioned yet. Everybody from Forest Watch, raise your hands. We have Jeff Kuiper, Carrie Setnica. Awesome. And I'll be talking about the Defense Fund in a few minutes. But before I start, believe it or not, I'm going to invite Atticus up because he has a little something that he'd like to talk about, and I want to make sure we do that.
Thank you, Carol. Good morning. I keep thinking about the old phrase, to plant the seeds of trees whose shade you may never sit under. And it seems so fitting here today and with all of you. So thank you for allowing me to speak. I work for Assemblymember Steve Bennett, who many of you know. I say this often, but really, he really wanted to be here today for his dear friend, but he's unfortunately in Sacramento. State legislature's in full swing right now, so he wanted me to be here to present the following certificate of recognition on behalf of the California State Assembly, which I will now read. Certificate of recognition presented to the Ojai Valley Land Conservancy in deep appreciation and memory of our dear friend, John Broesamle. Through John's tireless efforts as founding president of the Ojai Valley Defense Fund and as former president of the Ojai Valley Land Conservancy, the Ojai Valley has successfully acquired spectacular publicly protected lands for everyone in our community to enjoy. Commendations are conveyed for the work of our conservation giant, and upon celebrating John's Fox Canyon Trail ribbon cutting, dated this day in February 2026. Congratulations. Tom, would you like to come up and receive this?
Thanks.
Absolutely.
Here we go. Take a picture. Oh yeah. Oh wow. Beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, now it's my turn to get started. Other members of our family are here. My husband Gil, I don't know where you are, but he's here somewhere. Oh, there's Gil. He called Dad, and Dad was his dad, because Gil lost his own father at a very young age, and so Dad was privileged to be a father figure to Gil. My brother Rob is here somewhere. Don't know where, but oh, there he is back there. And let's see. I'd like to echo Mom's sentiments, thanking the Land Conservancy. I grew up knowing about the Land Conservancy because it started as an idea. Now it expanded to something so extraordinary that it makes the Ojai Valley that last remaining what old Southern California used to be. Sandy Bueckley, I'd like to point her out, former CFO of Patagonia Land Conservancy board member, sitting on the bench for her beloved husband George, whom she lost several years ago. So now her George and my dad will share this space together. Your friendship with my dad, you were felt. He could talk to you in such confidence, and you were a beloved and trusted friend. And to Keith at the Land Conservancy, whom I have not met yet, but he made sure this bench was installed. I was here Saturday afternoon, and by Sunday morning at 6 a.m, this bench was here. So thank you to Keith. Thank you to Perry Van Houten from the Ojai Valley News, who for years has been bringing our wild places into our homes through his incredible journalism and beautiful articles. So thank you, Perry, for being such a dear and beloved friend of our family. Steve Adams, Jim Antunes for having done the sound. Everybody came out of the woodwork and offered to help with this to make it so special, and I'm just really, really appreciative. Bill Shamrock, where are you? Bill's a key reason why we have this trail named for Dad, and so just much gratitude from our family to you, and of course to Jill. I'd like to acknowledge my mom too, because behind every volunteer is perhaps a partner that's holding down the fort at home, and she worked as hard as Dad did, and didn't get as many accolades as Dad. And you were event coordinator, volunteer event coordinator for the Land Conservancy for 10 years, and so if you ever went to a Moonlight on the Meadow event, that was Mom's doing, with lots of funny stories that came out of that. So. And then lastly, Roger. Where are you, Roger Essick? There you are. We'll be hearing from him in a minute. Roger, longtime friend of Dad's. You guys really got into some good trouble back in the day, decades ago. He so enjoyed you as a longtime friend and a partner in open space. And it was Roger who reached out to us right away after we lost Dad and said, how can the Land Conservancy best honor this great man that we have lost for his contributions to the valley. So, Roger, thank you for all that you've done. It's so fitting to me that Fox Canyon is the trail that was chosen to be renamed for Dad, because if you climb it, it overlooks the valley he loved so much, held so dear, and worked so hard to protect. He also really loved Lucy's Trail, which is right here. His grandson did his Eagle Scout project on this trail, restoring it after the damage from the pandemic. And this photo is Dad up on Lucy's, looking over at Fox Canyon. Not knowing, of course, that one day the trail would be named for him, so that's a favorite. Of course, that one day the trail would be named for him, so that's a favorite photo of mine now. I can do this. In thinking through, what I'd like to say for this dedication, I recognize, as Atticus, you said, that Dad was a conservation giant, to be sure. But he was a very humble and quiet one. He led from behind, much preferring that others be recognized than he would be. All he cared about was that land was being protected. If you'd like to know a little bit more about him, I think everybody here knew him well, but I brought copies of his obituary, which give a little bit more of his background and what he did throughout the course of his career and his life. But in keeping with what I think he would want me to focus on today, I know he would encourage me to spend less time on him and more time on those who continue to do the heavy lifting for our wild places and who carry on and inspire us all for the next generations. You see, conservation never gets to rest. It is a perpetual job left at the end of the day to the next generation. So I think Dad would want me to focus on all of you, the volunteers, hikers, donors. We need all of you to make these places special, protected, and wild, both for us and for all the wildlife that we are constantly pushing into smaller and smaller areas. So when I think of the collective we that it takes to protect the valley we share, for Mom, she mentioned Alan and Paula, and for me, and I think for Mom too, one person comes to mind who for decades has been exemplifying Dad's values, his commitment to the community, and all the things that that make Dad somebody special that we all want to celebrate here today. This person embodies the core values, the sheer grit and determination that it takes to make the Ojai Valley a special place for now, for our kids, and for our grandkids, and that's Jim Jackson. Jim. I think my dad would heartily approve of me calling you out today, Jim, because Jim was one of Dad's best friends and confidants. They first met in the classroom. I think you were 22 and Dad was 32, something like that. They became fast friends, then neighbors on the East End, and then they worked tirelessly together toward many good things, but especially acquisition and restoration of the Ojai Meadows Preserve and the Ventura River Preserve. Our community would never have those preserves if it weren't for Mr. Jackson right over there, so if you get a chance, everybody can thank him. Dad's and Jim's view at the time, and it was exquisitely effective, was that when it comes to saving land, you throw your hat over the fence and then you figure out how to get it back. You get the land, you secure it, and then you figure out how to pay for it. Risky elsewhere, perhaps, but not in the Ojai Valley. It always succeeded because we as a community always step up. And Mom mentioned the plaque over there. This is the plaque of donors who made this extraordinary preserve, the Valley View Preserve, possible. So you might take a look at it. We've lost a lot of those donors, but those you might thank because of them, we get to hike up here for free. We get to enjoy all of these wild places looking down on our valley that we all share. And it's going to be the younger generations who will be on future plaques. So thank those you know now, and hopefully these plaques will inspire the younger generations to give what they can give going forward. Jim has continued his legacy of leadership for decades. He's currently the president of the Ojai Valley Defense Fund, soon to be stepping off the board, hopefully only briefly. But the Ojai Valley Defense Fund is a nonprofit that Dad founded when our community asked him to step in and create a community chest of funds standing ready to protect the Ojai Valley from the kind of environmental onslaught that as a community we have always warded off, but just barely. And it is clear that outside forces at some point are going to win unless we were ready with money in hand to be able to protect our community. And as a result of the Ojai Valley Defense Fund, we now have $1.6 million in funds in hand ready to protect this valley from, or protect the environmental well-being of this valley. So Jim's leadership of that organization has been stellar, has propelled the organization forward, and we're just so very grateful, and I know Dad was too. So anybody from the Defense Fund, former or current board members, maybe raise your hands. Yeah. So when I think about people like Jim and all of you who participate in all the many ways that you do, I know Dad would encourage us all to celebrate those whom perhaps he was blessed to mentor and to partner with, and to encourage and thank all of the others working hard for our open spaces. So as we hike this trail named for him, may it remind us all to do just that. Celebrate those who make our lives and our community infinitely better. Thank you, everybody. And with that, it is my profound privilege to welcome Roger Essick up to the podium.
All right. That was a lawyer. Now you got a farmer. So you don't know what you're going to get. So, but it won't be long. What I like, I think all of you know a lot about John, but I think one of the things you don't know about John is why he was so valuable to the, I mean, the obvious reason why he was so valuable to the Conservancy, but he came onto the board at a very key time. Back then, a lot of you may remember, most of you maybe don't, but we went for about 10 years without ever getting a piece of land or anything. We were just struggling. We didn't know what we were doing. We finally got to the point where we had a part-time employee, but it was all volunteers, but we finally got along. We got a donation of the El Vento Preserve out in the East End, which is hard to get to now, but that kind of got us going, and John was part of that, but John was totally dedicated to getting more land. The thing, but he was focused, and he was relentless and persistent. And the Ojai Meadows Preserve finally came up as a possibility, and John was leading the way on that. And it was actually all these deals are hard, but that one was really incredibly difficult. It was a couple different parcels. We had board meetings in a little tiny office building on the back of the arcade, and those are the worst board meetings I've ever been to. I mean, they were tense. We didn't know what we were doing, and there was internal conflict and everything, but John was totally persistent and just stubborn as hell, and just kept pushing forward and would not give up. And we eventually made that purchase and push forward and on into it took us to a whole nother level. It was a really incredible breakthrough for us, and it was because of John's persistence and leadership at that time. He was the right man at the right time at that time for that. It was invaluable to the organization and pushed us to a whole nother level. Since then, there's been other levels where we've gone to, and you get to now where we have very professional staff, and capability, and it's just, but John laid the groundwork for that, and even to the boring stuff of bylaws and, policies and all that kind of stuff which we really didn't have. So I think that's where, tremendous value to the Conservancy, and we wouldn't be where we are without him. And I think that's why we decided to honor him, name this trail after him. And I think the trail is perfect for that because it's steep with a lot of switchbacks, and that was exactly the way those early deals were. And you got to be persistent to get to the top, but when you get to the top, the rewards are great. So anyway, that's kind of where we are. We're really, really happy to be able to name it in his honor because his more than the public. With that, we were going to do a ribbon cutting, I think. Is that correct? Yeah. All right. So